and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. This video is going to be all about women in translation. So August is Women in Translation month, where people around the world celebrate women in translation, specifically women who write in languages other than English, who are then translated into English and into other languages. And this year we also have a reading event here on BookTube hosted by 3 hosts. We have Katja at Page Turners with Katja, Ross at Ross at Scallydandling about the books, which is a fantastic name, just a little bit tricky to say. And then Angelia at Read and Reread. They have come up with 4 different prompts that you can use if you want to, as like, you know, a stepping off point and like inspiration for what to read. But as long as you read one book by a woman in translation, you have sort of completed this reading event and taken part. I will read the 4 prompts now, and then I will go through the books that I have read since last year when I did a similar video to this, which I will have linked below. And I don't want to like repeat books that I mentioned in that video, but I will mention the books that I have read since then, and then the books that I have acquired since then. As you can see, my shelves are looking a little bit disheveled, and that is because I pulled out all of the books that I have by women in translation, and there are a lot. I will just like briefly mention the premise and like the genre and things, and then I figure I will also just like mark which prompt they would fit as I go along. Like I will put that up on the screen somewhere, because it would be easier for me to go through these books sort of continent by continent or region by region, and that way it will also sort of tie into HRCYED, which I'm participating in this year, and other people might also do that. And then, you know, we have the books sort of sorted by regions in the world, and at least continents. But the 4 prompts that they have come up with are: number 1, read a translated book by a woman from a continent other than your own. So like this structure will also be helpful for that. Number 2, read a translated genre novel, perhaps horror, fantasy, science fiction, crime fiction, or romance. I don't think I have any romance in my pile, but pretty much all of the other ones. Number 3, read a translated work by a woman that is not a novel. Plays, poetry, short stories, letters, memoirs, biography, general nonfiction, etc. I'm not sure I have any of that. I think most of the books that I have are novels, or like novellas. Like a lot of them are pretty short, which also works great for Shorty September. So like if you want to keep reading women in translation in September, but you want them short, I have those too. And then number 4, read a backlist book translated by a woman. And that's the kind of information that I will put up on the screen, or you'll just have to do your own research. I forgot to mention there's also a group read of The Door by Magda, Szabó, which I plan to participate in. At least I want to finally get around to reading the book. And you will find all of the information that you need about the group read on the hosts' channels, which are all linked in the description. So I'm gonna go from west to east on a world map, and we're gonna start in South America. And the first one I'm gonna mention is Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. I talked about this in my video last year as a book that I wanted to read, and I have since bought it and read it and loved it. This is set in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and it is translated from the Spanish by Frances Riddle. This follows Elena, who is an older woman dealing with Parkinson's, and she is on a quest to find out what really happened to her daughter who died. This is an author that I want to continue reading from, so I also have Cathedrals by the same author and translated by the same translator, and this is the latest release of hers. I don't really know what this is about, and I don't want to know too much, so I'm just like covering my eyes and ears as soon as I hear anyone talk about this. But yeah, I'm very excited about this one. There are a lot of backlist novels of hers that are translated into English as well, so plenty to choose from. I think they're all sort of crime novels, but they have a lot of social commentary and yeah, a lot more to say than just, you know, a murder mystery. Another book that I have read and loved is On Earth as It Is Beneath by Ana Paula Maya, which was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize, and I have since bought of Cattle and Men by the same author. The first book is translated by Padma Vishwanathan, and the other one is translated by Zoe Perry. These are both set in Brazil and are translated from the Portuguese. On Earth as It Is Beneath is set in this old prison. There aren't a lot of prisoners left and not a lot of staff left, but there are some, and the warden is a bit weird, and every like full moon night he selects a prisoner to hunt. It's very suspenseful, and my heart was pounding when I read it, and I loved it, and I have now convinced my boyfriend to read it, and he's also loving it. He's like halfway through, and I don't really know what this is about. It's something about cattle and men, and yeah, I don't want to know too much before going into it. I've also read another book now at the start of July. I read this in a day. It's very short as well, and it doesn't look as short, but the text is very large, and it's sort of set, like it doesn't even cover the whole page, and the chapters are very short. And this is The Bitch by Pilar Quintana, translated from the Spanish by Lisa Dillman, I'm pretty sure. This is set in Colombia and follows a woman who really wants to have children but is struggling on that front, and then she finds this puppy, and like a person she knows in the town there has a bunch of puppies, and she gets to choose one, and we go from there. I'm not sure this is a book for you if you love dogs and you find it very difficult to read about animals not being treated very well. I would maybe steer clear from this, but apart from that, or like if you can stomach that, I thought it was fantastic. It looks at motherhood and sort of social issues, and we're just in this head, and there are past things and present things, and yeah, I loved it, and like I said, I read it in a day. It's about 150 pages or so. Loved this one, but a caution for animal lovers. Another book on my July TBR that I'm hoping to get to this month is We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Cabezon Camara. This was longlisted for the International Booker Prize. I think it was shortlisted as well, you know, if you care about that sort of thing. Translated from the Spanish by Robin Myers. This is set in the jungle. There's this person who I think escaped from Spain, or like they came across the ocean from Spain to Latin America. He escaped as a young girl, and since then he's become Antonio. So now in the jungle and hounded by the army he deserted, Antonio is caring for 2 Guarani girls he rescued from enslavement. A lot of interesting themes and topics in this book, and I'm very curious to read it. And then I have 3 more from South America. One of them is a Swedish translation of Clean by Alia Trabuco Serran, translated to the Swedish by Hanna Nordenhög, and I'm not sure who translated the English version. There's a little girl who has died under mysterious circumstances, and a maid tells her story from within a prison cell. I think this is kind of slow, but like mysterious, and also like social commentary and about the people who work as maids and similar things. And this is set in Chile, in Santiago. And then I have a novel from Paraguay called Smoke by Gabriela Aleman, translated from the Spanish by Dick Cluster. And I first heard about this from Melanie at A Dark Corner of the Library. She is doing like a read around the world women's edition. This was her pick for Paraguay, and I thought it sounded really interesting. There's a family patriarch who has deceased, and we follow a woman who has come back to sort of collect something, and there are questions haunting the home filled with memories that become palpable. What secrets must be kept in order to survive, and how long? It says it's a moody family saga set against a troubled history, exploring the aftermath of dictatorship. That all sounds very interesting to me. Not the most lighthearted read, but it sounds very good. And then my final book from South America is Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. She is an Argentinian writer from Buenos Aires, now living in Berlin, according to this book. This follows a woman called Amanda. She is lying feverish and unseeing in her hospital bed, trying to account for how she came to be there. She remembers the lake, the house, and the strange woman next door with her unthinkable confession. She remembers the fear of losing her young daughter. This sounds like a fever dream, and it also sounds horrific. I think it's a horror book, and it's very sort of sparse in terms of words on the page, and it's also not very long, so I'm expecting this one to be quite a quick read. It's 180 pages, but yeah, very airy pages. And then we're going to Europe, and I guess we're gonna start at the top and work our way down. I have 2 books from Iceland and translated from Icelandic to English. The first one is The Night Guest by Hildur Knutsdottir. I think I might have mentioned this last year, but I'm not sure. This is translated by Mary Robinette Kowal, and this is also a horror novel. It's about this woman called Idun in yet another doctor's office. She knows her constant fatigue is a sign that something's not right, but physicians dismiss her symptoms and blood tests don't reveal any cause. And then she sort of doesn't remember what happens at night or something. This has come recommended to me, I think again by Melanie at Dark Corner of the Library, and also by Caitlin at Spill the Reads. They both really enjoyed this, and I'm scared but intrigued. And then I also have The Mark by Frida Isberg, which is translated by Larissa Kaiser, and this is more of a speculative novel where the Icelandic government has decided to do like an empathy test on the population, and there's supposed to be like a referendum, I think, about whether or not that should be public information, or that make the test compulsory, it says. Some believe the test makes society safer, others decry it as a violation. But is that just because all they stand to lose? And then of course I have to mention a couple of Swedish books. One that I have read is Wild Boar by Hanna Lutz, which I read in Swedish, so I don't know the translator's name, but I do know that there is an English translation. And not a lot happens in that book. It's very short, and it sort of centers Wild Boar, but it looks at like, I think 4 or 5 different people who are, like, they have some connection to Wild Boar, but it's just like glimpses into moments that don't say a lot, but still sort of carry some kind of vibe. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but like, if you like books with no plot, just vibes, I guess that's a good one. I'm currently reading The Summer Book by Tove Jansson, and I'm listening to the audiobook of this as well, which is narrated by the author herself, and she has this wonderful like Finnish-Swedish dialect, which is very cozy to listen to. I'm not sure if the chapters in the book are in the same order as they are on the audiobook. I kind of struggle to find my place again when I've like listened before bed and drifted off, and then the next day I want to like, you know, match up my pages and to where I was conscious. The chapters are not really in order, they're just like little vignettes about this young girl called Sophia and her grandmother and their relationship, and they're on this island off the coast of Finland, and the father is there as well, but he hasn't really been present very much, as far as I have read. They go about their days and little things happen, and they might find a cat. They go exploring some part of the island, and they have these questions about life and death and, you know, existential things, philosophical things, and like also very sort of grounded everyday things. I love when the girl is like really angry about something and she's just like asking questions, but she's super mad. She's just like screaming her questions because she demands answers, and if the grandmother doesn't answer fully, she's like, explain it properly. A very cozy read and a very like atmospheric summer read that definitely feels like the Nordics. My other book that I want to mention is Himlabrand by Moa Bakke Åstot, which there is also an English translation of, called Fire in the Sky, I think. And obviously like, this is in Swedish, and all of these books that I read in Swedish are not in translation for me, but if you don't read Swedish, then it would be for you. This is a young adult queer romance, I think, written by a Sami author, and the characters are Sami, and Sami is the indigenous people of like northern Scandinavia. And if you're interested in young adult fiction, you might also be interested in August, which is a reading event also being hosted in August by Maria Andrea at Books and Bocadillos and Sui at Sui's Book Banter. That's all I have for the Nordics, and now let's move down across the continent. I have a bunch here. The first one I'll mention is a French little novella with a sort of ethical thought experiment, I guess. This is Offenses by Constance Debré, translated from the French by Jeffrey Zuckerman. This is about a man who kills an elderly woman for a very small amount of money, and it asks the question, is a criminal born or made? I think this sounds fascinating and I'm looking forward to reading that. I think that The Witch by Marie Ndaye is also translated from the French. This is translated by Jordan Stump. This was also shortlisted for the International Booker Prize. Maybe you can tell that list sort of inspired some of these purchases. This woman or this family, the mother is a witch, and she's like looking to see if her twin daughters are also going to be witches, and if they are, they cry blood. I think that's sort of what it is. That's a very sort of in a nutshell description. I don't know too much about this and the story, but it sounds intriguing to me and I want to read it, and so I got it. The text is a bit more normal size, and it's about 130 pages, so yeah, another short one. I also have Orlando by Jacqueline Hartman. I've read and loved I Who Have Never Known Men by this author, and this one is translated by Ross Schwartz, which is the same translator, I think, as for the other book. This is a take on Orlando by Virginia Woolf, but like in a gender swap kind of way, and that's pretty much all I know. I want to read more from this author. I know Angelia mentioned in her recommendations video or TBR video about women in translation, she mentioned a new book. I think it's like a collection of 4, I don't know, I might be misremembering that. Anyways, I'm very curious to read this. I think it's going to be very different from the previous book that I read, but I am interested nonetheless. Let's look at a Nobel Prize in Literature laureate, and this is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. This is translated by, if they could just write that on the cover would be great. It's translated from the Polish by Antonia Lloyd-Jones, and it's set in Poland, and it's a mystery of sorts. I think it's sort of like genre bending. I've started it and just read like 20 pages or something, and I just had other things going on and I didn't have capacity to focus on this the way I wanted to. So yeah, I still have this to read, but I'm not very sad about that. I'm looking forward to this a lot. And then let's move down to Germany. I think this is translated from the German by Linda L. Gauss, and it's called Hey, Good Morning, How Are You by Martina Hefter, and it actually says who translated it on the front. The cover definitely drew me in, but then on the back we have these like little speech bubbles or like text bubbles. I bought this online, so I didn't see this, but I think it's sort of representative of the book. I think the book is also like a little bit mixed media-ish and like short little things. It says, a woman finds solace in her interactions with internet scammers in this eclectic and moving novel about communication and isolation, needs and desires, and how far we are prepared to go for love. Juno Isabella Flock is a dancer and performance artist who spends her days caring for her ailing husband and her nights chatting to love scammers online. I just think it sounds like a very intriguing setup, and yeah, I'm just curious to see where that story goes. And then I have 2 Spanish novels. The first one is Bad Habit by Alana S. Portero. This is translated by Mara Faye Letham, and I think the next one that I wanted to mention is as well, and that is Discontent by Beatriz Serrano. This is about a young unnamed trans woman who grows up in a working class suburb of Madrid in the 1980s that has no place for her, and she moves to the city's downtown neighborhoods, discovers a new community and kinship amid a dazzling party scene, animated by charming junkies, glamorous pop divas, and fallen angels. I have heard fantastic things about this and I want to read it, so that's why it's on my shelves. And then the other book is a little bit more lighthearted. This is about a woman called Marissa whose life looks enviable. She's working in marketing or social media or communication or something like that, and then they are gonna go on this like work retreat. What's it called? Yeah, a team building retreat, isolated in the Segovia forest, surrounded by psychopathic bosses, overzealous co-workers, flirty retreat staff, and an excess of drugs. This sounds hilarious to me and I can't wait to read it. And I thought the book was dirty, but I think it's just her butt. The cover of this also speaks to my soul. And then finally I have a book that I heard about from Kat at Curious Cat, and this is an Italian novel called The Silent Period by Francesca Manfredi, translated by Ekin Oklap. And this is about a woman who decides to delete her social media app or apps, and then sort of stops talking and like disappears. Again, the cover is very intriguing, and just the concept of like stepping away from social media and then how far can you step away from real life, I guess. I think Kat thought it was a really weird novel and I'm expecting it to be as well. I hope that it's weird in a way that I like, and either way it's a woman in translation. Okay, so from Europe we're gonna move down to Africa, and the first book that I am going to mention is The Impatient by Jaili Amadou Amal, translated by Emma Ramadan from the French, I'm pretty sure. This is a novel set in Cameroon, and it follows 3 women and their marriage situations. One of them is, I think, already married to a man, and then he takes a second wife and she has to deal with that. And another one is married off to her cousin. I guess it just looks at women's experiences and situations in Cameroon. It says that Jaili Amadou Amal is a Fulani author and women's rights activist dedicated to raising awareness and putting an end to violence committed against women of her region. And then I have another read which is not going to be lighthearted either. This is Woman at Point Zero by Nawal El Sadawi, and this is translated from the Arabic by Sharif Hetata, and this is set in Egypt. We're following a woman who is on death row for murdering a man. I think Caitlin at Spiller Reads had read this as well and said it's a difficult read, but I feel like a lot of the books that I read are, so yeah, we'll see how I go with this and when I'm in the mood for this kind of book. And then we're moving a little bit east. I have Minor Detail by Adania Shibli. This is also translated from the Arabic by Elizabeth Jacquet. It says, this spare and haunting novel cuts to the heart of the experience of erasure, dispossession, and life under occupation in Palestine, and reveals the difficulty of piecing together the shards of a narrative concealed by a fragmented history. I think there is an event that is being described as a minor detail, but for the main character it's not. I'm expecting this to be another difficult read, but you know, some stories are just important to listen to, and I think this is one of them. And I have a couple of more books here. They're not the most lighthearted, but I promise there are some more fun things at the end. Next I have Women Without Men by Sharnush Parsipur, and this is translated from the Persian by Faridun Farouk. This was first published in Persian in 1989, and the translation came out in 2011. This internationally acclaimed masterpiece by one of Iran's most important and influential writers traces the interwoven destinies of 5 women, including a wealthy middle-aged housewife, a sex worker, and a school teacher, as they arrive by a different path to live together in an abundant garden on the outskirts of Tehran. That sounds fascinating to me, and like the title alone is intriguing, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm hoping there's some hope and joy in this, but yeah, we'll see. Moving east in Asia, the first book that I have to mention is White Moss by Anna Nerkagi, and this is translated from the Russian by Irina Sadovina, and this is set in Siberia, and it says, on the eve of his wedding, young Alyoshka pines for an earlier love. And I think that's pretty much the setup of the story. Yeah, I think it's a love story, and I think it looks at their community and their way of life and the challenges they're facing. And yeah, this came out earlier this year in the English translation, so I'm curious to get to this, but perhaps not in August, just based on the weather conditions. From Korea, I have one book that I mentioned last year that I have since read. Maybe I read it in August last year, I think so. The Old Woman with the Knife by Gu Byung-mo, and this is translated by Chi Young Kim. This is about a woman who is an assassin, an old woman, and she finds some competition by this new younger man who joins the company that she works for. She's gonna show him who's boss. We get their backstory, and there's like a new mission, and yeah, it's a bit of a thriller, I think, but also a lot of like intrigue and drama, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't exactly how I thought it would be, but I think it's a good one and one that I would recommend. It might not be for everybody, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then I have one new book written by a Korean author, and this is Project V by Park Seo-leon, translated by Jean Peng. It follows a girl who enters like a robot competition, and she's really good at it, and yeah, it's this like reality TV show, I think, where they make robots. There are some fun illustrations in the book as well, like when there's a new chapter and things. Yeah, it just looks like a fun time, and if you have watched the video up until this point, you'll know that I need some lighter reads, and this is definitely one of them. And then finally, I just have my Japanese novels left to mention. The first one is Idol Burning by Rin Usami, and this is translated by Asa Yoneda. This wasn't my favorite, and I sort of knew that beforehand, or like I had heard that this hadn't gotten the best ratings. It's about a girl who is like obsessed with her idol, and then the idol is accused of like hitting a fan or something, and her world just falls apart. I was expecting there to be a plot from that point, but there really isn't. I was expecting her to like make these crazy decisions and like go to extreme lengths to save his reputation or save her own face, or I don't know, take some drastic action. There's none of that. It was a short one, and I was intrigued by it, and I read it, so that's one that you can read if you want to, with that glowing recommendation. Another book that I loved was Confessions by Kanai Minato. This is translated by Stephen Snyder, and this is a very dark mystery thriller novel, and the story is about this teacher, and her daughter was killed, and she is convinced that her students were responsible for her daughter's death. Yeah, it's a very intriguing story. I couldn't stop reading it, and yeah, it's just a very interesting book. Highly recommend this one if it sounds at all interesting to you. Because I loved that so much, I also decided to get Penance by the same author. This is translated by a different translator called Philip Gabriel. I know very little about what this is about. There are a group of people, I think, that are guilty, like they're feeling guilty about something that happened in the past, and then they sort of come together again. I'm not sure if that's correct at all, if that's just like a vague understanding I have from having read the premise at some point, and I have since forgotten, and I'm not going to look it up again because I want to go into this blind. A book that I almost feel like I have read because I've mentioned it so many times is The Night of Baba Yaga by Akira Utani. This is translated by Sam Pett. It says on the front cover, and that's very good. This is also a very sort of sparsely written book, and it's not very long. It's about 200 pages, and I bought it because it gave me Kill Bill vibes. There is a girl called Shindo. She's a fighter, and she is kidnapped by the Yakuza, and there's another girl that she is protective of, I think, and that's really all I know. I think this is going to be a pretty quick read. I think the audiobook is like 4 hours, and so I want to read this with the audio as well, and just fly through it in a day when the time is right. And then my final book is a book that I think Angelia read, if not last year, then she recommended it last year, Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami. This is translated again by Asa Yoneda from the Japanese. And this is a science fiction novel. Welcome to the distant future. Humans are on the verge of extinction and have settled in small tribes across the planet under the observation and care of the mothers. That sounds very intriguing to me. Yeah, very much looking forward to this one as well. And yeah, I think those are all of the books that I wanted to mention. Hopefully you found some books of interest and are excited to explore the world of women in translation, because there are a lot of good books to choose from. Please feel free to share your own recommendations in the comments and we can all find new great books. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day and I will see you in the next one. Bye. And then I have a novel from Paraguay by Gabriela Albablaha.